Let me tell you a story, not one passed around like urban legends at campfires. This one is different. It's something I lived through. And when I say lived through, I mean barely. It started 2 winters ago. I've been laid off from my job in tech, and like a lot of people who think a change of scenery might help, I packed up my things and moved out of the city. There was this old house for rent way out in the countryside, just off Stroud Lane, about an hour and a half from the nearest town. The price was suspiciously low, but I chalked it up to location and condition. It was a 2-story farmhouse from the 1920s, half renovated, with creaky floors and windows that didn't quite seal. I needed the isolation, the quiet, a place to think, maybe to write. That's what I told myself. The first night, I noticed something odd. Not terrifying, not even that mysterious, just off. You know when you feel like something is watching you, even though logically you know it's not possible? That sort of subtle, low-frequency dread. I chalked it up to the silence, the wind, the adjustment, but it didn't go away. Every night around 2:14 a.m., I checked the clock. It sounded like someone was walking around downstairs. Not pacing, not erratic movement, just deliberate, slow steps. 4 or 5 creaks of floorboards. Then silence, every single night. I tried recording it on my phone. Playback was nothing but static. I told myself it was the house settling. That's what people say, right? Old house just settling. I wanted to believe it. But I grew up in a house built in 1895. I know the difference between wood expanding and the sound of footsteps. Still, I stayed. Then came the cellar. You know how some houses have those storm cellars out back, built in the ground with heavy doors that stick from disuse? I didn't notice it until my second week there. Snow had melted enough to reveal part of a rusted handle just barely poking out of the ground. I assumed it was some old storage space, or maybe even a septic hatch. But then I found the other door. From the inside, behind the pantry, was a false wall. I didn't find it on purpose. I dropped a jar of pasta sauce, and when it rolled, it bumped against the panel, though it shifted slightly. I pulled it back, and behind it, stairs. Steep, narrow ones, leading down into total blackness. They didn't match the rest of the house. Too narrow, too clean. So now we had 2 things. A hidden stairwell inside, and an exterior cellar entrance I hadn't opened yet. I didn't go down the stairs. I'm not an idiot, but I did toss a flashlight down to see how deep it went. It bounced once, twice, then a third time. Then nothing, no clatter, just silence, like it had been swallowed. I closed the panel and pushed the pantry back into place. And that night, the footsteps moved upstairs. I'm not embellishing. I swear on everything. This is exactly what happened. The steps started at 2:14 a.m. as usual, but instead of being downstairs, I heard them in the hallway right outside my bedroom. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe hard. I lay there with the blanket pulled just high enough so I could see the door. There was no shadow under the crack, no silhouette, but something was on the other side. It wasn't just standing there. It was listening. And then came the knock. Just one, soft, like the kind of knock you give when you're trying not to wake someone, or when you're not sure if you're supposed to be there. I didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. I waited until sunrise, then packed a duffel bag and got in my car. I didn't leave permanently, at least not yet. I just drove into town. Needed people, Needed signal. I stopped at this little diner and asked the waitress if she knew anything about that house. She paused. Not like she didn't hear me, more like she didn't want to answer. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You rented the Stroud place?" she asked, voice low. "That house doesn't want people in it. It never has." I laughed a little, but she didn't smile. People don't stay more than a few weeks. Some leave in the middle of the night. A few don't leave at all. I asked what she meant by that. She just walked away. When I got back to the house later that day, the inside panel was wide open. The pantry door was on the floor, like it had been ripped off its hinges from the inside. That was the first time I actually considered running. But curiosity is a powerful drug. I took a heavy flashlight, a crowbar, and a camera, and I decided to go down the stairs. I counted each step, 32 in total. The air got colder with each one. At the bottom, the flashlight barely cut the darkness. It was like the beam just died a few feet ahead, but I could see enough to make out what was down there. Cages, not small ones, big ones, human-sized, some open, some closed, rusted, but not old enough to be ancient. And on the far wall, in black paint or maybe something darker, there were tally marks. Hundreds, maybe more. And then my flashlight flickered. That moment, total darkness, is something I'll never forget. There's nothing quite like the sensation of being in a space where light refuses to exist. I backed up, counting steps in my head, trying not to run. When I burst out a hidden stairwell and slammed the panel shut, I noticed something else. All the windows were blacked out from outside. Every single one. I hadn't noticed it because it always looked like night in there, even at noon. That was the last night I stayed. I drove into town, this time with no intention of returning. I told the real estate agent the house was unsafe, that I wanted out of the lease. She didn't argue. She didn't even ask what happened. Just said, understood. I went back a week later with a friend. I didn't tell him the whole story. I just said I left something behind. We pulled up the long dirt road, and the house was gone. Not collapsed, not burned, gone. Only the foundation remained. We stood there for 20 minutes, just staring. I know I didn't hallucinate any of it. I have photos, video, footage of that cellar stairwell, the cages. But when I went to pull up the files, every single one was corrupted. Every single one. I still don't know what that place was. I've tried researching it. Stroud Lane barely shows up on maps now. If you search the address, all you get is a red pin in an empty field. But I remember, and I know what I heard. It would have been easier if I could just forget the whole thing, sell off the rest of my belongings, go back to the city, pretend I had a mental breakdown, and imagined it all. But the thing about fear is, when it runs deep enough, it doesn't let go. It festers. I started having these dreams, replays of that night, but not quite the same. In the dreams, I go down the stairs again, but this time I wasn't alone. There was something down there, something waiting. I couldn't ever see it clearly, just a shape, tall, slightly hunched, arms too long, breathing slowly, like it didn't need to, but did it out of habit. And the cages, they weren't empty anymore. After a month of no sleep and failed therapy sessions, I went back to the diner. I needed answers. I thought Maybe the waitress who warned me would tell me more now. She wasn't there. When I asked about her, the guy at the counter looked at me like I was trying to be funny. "We haven't had a waitress here in 2 years," he said. "Diner's just me and my brother." "No," I insisted. She had dark hair, short, maybe 40, wore a red sweater. He just shook his head. "You sure you're not mixing us up with a place in Burnett? Folks say it's haunted out there." Burnett was a ghost town 10 miles east. I didn't say anything else. On the drive back, I found myself turning onto Stroud Lane without even meaning to. My hands moved on the wheel like it was muscle memory. The road was more overgrown than before, narrower, like the trees had leaned in, reclaiming it. The field where the house once stood was just grass and weeds now. No rubble, no burned wood, no foundation. Just a low depression in the earth, perfectly square, like something had sunk instead of been built. I parked and walked into the field. It was silent, not countryside silent, wrong silent. No birds, no wind, no distant cars. Just the crunch of my boots on dead grass. And then I heard it, one creak, just one, from under my feet. I dropped to my knees and started pulling up the grass. My fingers scraped against wood. I dug like a madman, bare hands tearing at the frozen soil until I uncovered a trapdoor, not the cellar doors from before. This was a single, square hatch. I don't know what possessed me, but I opened it. The smell hit me first. Wet earth, rot, something sour underneath. A ladder descended into darkness. And just like before, I brought a flashlight. This time, I didn't toss it. I kept it tightly in my hand and climbed down, counting each rung. There were 32. At the bottom was a corridor. It didn't feel like a basement. The air was damp but didn't move. The walls were stone, older than the house. This was something under the house, not built with it. Something much, much older. There were symbols scratched into the stone. I don't know what they meant. Some looked like twisted runes, others like handprints. Red, faded, like they were part of the wall now. I walked for what felt like 5 minutes before I reached the door. It was wooden, reinforced with iron. Something, had bolted it shut from the outside. There were claw marks on the inside. And then the footsteps came again. Not above this time. Behind me, I turned and saw nothing. But I could hear breathing. Low, steady. Then another sound. Metal dragging on stone. Chains maybe? I ran. I didn't try to be brave. I didn't try to investigate. I turned and sprinted back down the corridor, past the symbols, up the ladder, 32 rungs, and out into the daylight. But it wasn't daylight. It was night, pitch black, stars overhead. And my car? Gone. Just the outline of where the tires had been. I walked back to the road, using the flashlight until it died, and finally made it to a gas station an hour later. They called the police. I gave a statement. They drove me back. There was no field, no hollow, just trees. Stroud Lane, they said, doesn't go that far. Ends in a dead-end turnaround. No house had stood there in decades. I tried to show them the spot, but the road was gone. It literally wasn't there. It just stopped. They looked at me like I was having an episode. I started to believe I was. Until I got home and saw the photos. Not the ones I'd taken before. These were new. On my phone were 36 pictures, none taken by me. They showed the corridor, the door, the symbols, and in the last photo, I was in the cage. I don't show those pictures to anyone now, not because I'm afraid of people thinking I'm crazy, but because I'm afraid they'll see something I missed, something still in the frame. And every few nights, always around 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzes. No number, just a photo notification. And every time, the picture is a little closer to my door.